right, and we're golden, and we're all
All set?
we're all set. We're
All good
live.
to go?
We're going.
All
We're gonna
right.
start off with you just generally introducing yourself. Who are you? Who the hell are you today? Why are you
Today,
here with us? There's nobody here yet, but they'll shuffle
sure,
in.
sure. Today I am James Silva. I'm founder of Ska Studios, creator of Salt and Sanctuary, The Dishwasher, Vampire Smile, Charlie Murder, and a lot of older Xbox indie games that some of them may be relegated to the ash heap of history, if not most of them actually. Um, and Yeah, I'm here to talk about video games, I suppose.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about all kinds of stuff. I like to
Right.
I like to split it evenly. So first off, on a non-video game topic, but
Ooh.
this is a creative thing. Obviously, you're into music, not just like listening to it, but actually like playing the guitar. Music actually played a pretty prominent role in like some of your what would some would consider your debut game, the Dishwasher. So, what got you into playing the guitar and your just general interest in music and all that good stuff?
So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much like any kid from the suburbs. You want to, you see a guitar, you imagine yourself playing it, and at some point, like in my 20s, I just started trying to learn chords, and once chords stuck, everything just followed, and um, I had this. I was working with the setup that a friend had to do just multi-track recording, and I got hooked on that. Um, and Yeah. Oh, and I think at that time, Guitar Hero was I was crazy into Guitar Hero. I mean, it was like mid 2000s, like 2005, 6, 7. Just this golden era for Guitar Hero, and then Rock Band took off. Um, so yeah, not only so yeah, Dishwasher Dead Samurai was the first Dishwasher game, and not only did I just put a lot of love into that music, but I it turned out it wasn't that difficult of a thing to do. I set it up so I could do like Guitar Hero style mini games, and for better, they're like I look at them now and I'm like, did they age well? But you know what, it was a good time while it happened, so I had a good time. And it was neat going from like playing Guitar Hero to just like implementing my own Guitar Hero like system. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was definitely a unique thing. I remember just seeing all the different control methods you threw in there.
Yeah,
It
because yeah,
got pretty
dishwasher. You know, what's
crazy.
funny? I, I have forgotten about this, and then something will remind me about it. How in Dishwasher Dead Samurai, you could play as a floating guitar if you just plugged in a guitar controller, and like it was like playing single chords, or just like single button plays would send out little lightning bits, and then there were certain chords that would like heal the dishwasher, and so you could have this sort of like weird hover guitar co-op mode. And it wasn't really talked about, but again, I had fun implementing it, and maybe at the end of the day, that's all that matters. I'd like to think so.
Hey, let's talk about the past. Since we're all prone to dwelling there, I'm not getting any younger. None of us are getting any younger. We tend to get lost in the nostalgia. I often try to remember games as fondly as possible, but then when I go back to them because things have changed, life changes. You find out that not exactly rose tinted glasses, but you find out that just the way you feel about things has changed. So, like how exactly has nostalgia affected the way you design, develop, do anything? Because obviously, there's always this big controversy with independent games, especially that they're obsessed with pixel art or two-dimensional gameplay, and they're obsessed with what would be considered nostalgic gameplay that harkens back to Nintendo, Genesis, etc. era. That kind of what some of us might consider the golden age of video gaming, where stuff was just so edgy and different, and they were always trying to push these weird boundaries.
Mm. Yeah, so I know in my experience, uh, nostalgia has, I guess it's kind of played an adverse role with, particularly with Charlie Murder. Charlie Murder for me was like I kind of River City Ransom for Nintendo was one of my favorite games growing up, and I spent a long time trying to make River City Ransom like games. It was like a fun thing to do. It was um, I mean, this happens to a lot of uh, newer developers. They get into one sort of genre and they keep just revisiting it. Um, and sometimes it's a good genre to visit, sometimes it isn't. And for me, River City Ransom, um, it's still, I mean, honestly, the Scott Pilgrim game did a really good job of hitting that River City Ransom style of game. If you're not familiar, it's like Double Dragon is the more familiar version. Just side scrolling beat 'em up. Nowadays, people would look at the style and be like, "Oh, Castle Crashers," because Castle Crashers drew a lot from River City Ransom. Um, but for my own, with my own situation with Charlie Murder, I definitely was like, I definitely saw, I put more value into the nostalgia of River City Ransom in making Charlie Murder, and the value was really only valuable to me because of my experience with it. So maybe a lot of that was lost on people who didn't have exactly the same childhood as me, and that's completely fair and normal. Um, and I mean, that's so from Charlie Murder to the next game was Salt and Sanctuary. I mean, Salt and Sanctuary was a game that was really trying to channel what worked about Dark Souls, and so then rather than these these tinted glasses, it was just, let's try to adapt a really solid gameplay design into a 2D space, into my own style. And I think it the two games resonated in ways that made sense, because nostalgia is not universal when it's something like as maybe niche as River City Ransom. Whereas I mean, Dark Souls, that design is, it's still going to be good in 20 years, I think. I hope.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny when I think of when people talk about Dark Souls in general, because it's really just it's another Metroidvania, and I remember playing the old first-person versions of their games, which was the Kingsfield
oh,
series,
Kingsfield, yeah,
and most people don't even know those exist. And it was always that same thing, but like what you did, I guess we will just jump into Salt Sector. What you did with that was you actually brought it back to its roots. And I'm one of those people, like, I'm okay with Dark Souls, but I could see its flaws, and I could see why making it a 3D game was kind of a mistake. Because there's always been this thing about
yeah. Ooh.
Castlevania, the old Castlevania, that making it a 3D game was a huge mistake, and they should have just left it alone. And that's kind of what they did with Dark Souls, and I couldn't get away from that. So when you did Salt and Sanctuary, um, and I think I found it just looking up games that you had worked on. I was just trying to see what you had worked on, and
Oh,
I found it. I didn't have a PS4, so I had to get it on Steam, and I was like, this is so much better than Dark Souls to me, because I don't have to deal with any of the 3D crap, and it had
uh,
like combos and
I
stuff like that.
I mean, I don't know if I can agree with you on it being better than Dark Souls. I certainly aspire to be as good, or not even as good. I aspire for a fraction of the greatness of Dark Souls. I'm glad you liked Salt and Sanctuary though, but yeah, and I think there are things, you know Dark Souls being a 3D game, um, the combat, the way it plays is um, such like a wonderfully stressful thing when you end up with this dance of aggressive enemies and maintaining your stamina and maybe just managing distance, managing your environment. That entire dance I cannot ever have in Salt and Sanctuary in a 2D game, and so instead the sort of dance becomes kind of a Castlevania esque dance where you're jumping and jump and stab and jump and stab, but the intensity of that combat dance from Dark Souls is something I really admire, and it's tragic that with my mere 2 dimensions, it cannot truly get through. But I'm glad that we that you enjoy what came of my efforts still. so so thank you.
All right, so we're gonna segue into something that it's funny. It's so much time has gone by now. I'm not even sure if it's even a relevant topic, but I always drag people back into the whole XNA discussions because it was a huge thing that Microsoft did. It was a huge thing for independent developed games to get onto consoles, and it really did just get buried and swept under the carpet. But XNA was obviously a big portal for you, even though you
Mm.
had been developing games under. I can't remember what I saw you using on your older stuff, but it wasn't XNA. You eventually switched over to XNA and started using the C sharp.
Mm.
So, but yeah, it was huge. It got you won the competition. You got Dishwasher onto the arcade, the Xbox Live Arcade, instead of
Yep.
just the Xbox Indies. You kind of got to be part of that growth. It had a huge stigma attached to it because they just kept dumping games into it. The peer review system was kind of questionable. And then we got all the way, we fast forward into the Xbox One, and I was super personally pissed. I'm like, where's James Games? Like, and then I found out, I had to find out through external sources that they were not porting or allowing games that used XNA, ironically, their own system,
Mm.
into Xbox One, and I'm like, you created this. This is your system, and now you're
Mm.
not allowing it, not allowing
Yeah.
developers. So even though I was a little bit obviously salty, I was like, oh, he's on PS4, and I know I'm not gonna get a PS4. But I was like, at the same time, I'm like, I totally understand because the system they did not they let the support go, and then they sort of brought it back. It's also I was glad to see Salt and Sanctuary come back, but
Mm.
it was one of those questionable decisions I think Microsoft made. So with all the stuff that happened with XNA, because it went over the course of years, it's gone from the or even the early life. It started I think in the early life of 360 because it made the 360 a very vibrant thing with the community games into the indie games. Eventually, getting, like I said, lost in the wind with the Xbox One. How do you feel with this, just like this life cycle of XNA and maybe where it even is now?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, XNA was. I mean, that's really what jump started my career. I was making Visual Basic games before then. So it's funny. My history of programming languages. When I was like 12, I learned Basic, and then I started playing around with this Apple thing called HyperCard. Some people have heard of HyperCard, and you could do scripting with HyperCard. You could make choose your own adventure type games with HyperCard. Little known fact: Myst was made with HyperCard, and and then HyperCard. From there, I learned some Visual Basic 6 with. You could use that with DirectX to draw to the screen in real time, and that was pretty neat. But not a great language for or a great system for really just robust game development. Um, and then when XNA came out, it took care of a lot of those little weird odds and ends that I just could never get working with Visual Basic. Like, for instance, I could never get alt tabbing to work right with Visual Basic. It was that sort of era. Um, but yeah, XNA came out. Everything was just very smooth and seamless, and it had all of the basic stuff that I needed. Um, and but at the point, I was still doing games as a hobby, and I was in school going for my comp sci masters, and between when I had like 3, 2, 3, 4 months left, and when I graduated, I had um, submitted Dishwasher to the Dream Build Play Contest. Submitted it. I graduated. I found a job. Started working at the job. About 2 months into the job, which I really started to kind of resent that job. I mean, it was a decent job, but I really just wanted to make games. 2 months in, Microsoft contacted me and um, kind of led me down this path where the game won. Got a contract, got to be able to make games for a living. I mean, the first Dishwasher game, it did decent, did well enough to make the next Dishwasher game, did well enough to make Charlie Murder, and it's been a whole thing since then. Um, and yeah, Charlie Murder was 2013, and I think Microsoft ended support for XNA in around 2013. Um, they were pushing like I'm not sure exactly what went wrong, and think I think what I'm saying right now is all just my own personal speculation and not something I'm not supposed to know or But they pushed they wanted XNA for Windows Phone because they were really trying to promote Windows Phone, and they were like, hey, we've got this framework for making games. It's really great, but we just don't know if we have a market for it. And we have this phone that needs some games. Let's put these two together. And like it wasn't I don't, yeah, I can see where the idea was coming from, but what ended up happening was all of the big name games, like back then, Angry Birds. I don't know if Angry Birds is big anymore, but back then Angry Birds was amazing, and so like the developers of Angry Birds are like, well, we're not gonna rewrite our whole game in a different, if we wrote it in like Objective C for iPhone, we're not gonna rewrite it in C# for Windows Phone. We're just not gonna do it, especially with the because the install base for Windows Phone was always pretty low. Um, and in the meanwhile, all the developers who had games made in C# already on Xbox and the Xbox Indie Games platform, most of those games weren't really mobile friendly, and a lot of those games just, I mean, not to be a jerk, not to be elitist, but a lot of the games just weren't very good games. I mean, it was hobbyist efforts. I myself have made a number of hobbyist efforts, and I will be the first to say that my hobbyist efforts were also not good. So you have a bunch of hobbyist games. All of the big name companies are going to pass on XNA for Windows Phone. So you kind of end up solving nothing, and maybe maybe whatever powers in charge were like, okay, we gave XNA two shots. We gave it a shot on Xbox 360. We gave it a shot on Windows Phone. And Xbox 360, it went all right. Windows Phone, no good. So let's just sunset this. And but at that point, there had been a lot of orphaned XNA developers, and some of the games were pretty good. Terraria was XNA, Fez was XNA, uh, um, Bastion was XNA, and so there emerged like an open source XNA community going under the name Mono Game that just pretty much made it so that if you like using XNA now, you can use Mono Game tomorrow. And that's what I'm using now. And Salt and Sanctuary on PS4 is running on Mono Game. Um, and it's nice to be able to still use the systems that I like. Uh, in this era, pretty much if you're not using Unity or Unreal, you're doing it the hard way. But I have so much invested in XNA in terms of just custom tools that I've made, and a lot, just a lot of code snippets that I can keep reusing, and switching over to Unity. It's even though Unity is the easy way, it would just be so much work to switch over. So I'm sticking with Mono Game for the time being, unless anything dramatic happens, and hopefully I don't get burned. um, but yeah, let's see what else. Oh yeah, backwards compatibility. That's a thing that, boy, I think I've been told things by people who are like, you didn't hear this from me, but yeah, basically there's can't talk about I can't talk about what I've heard, and I but yeah, it's a shame that there's no backwards compatibility for XNA. Just seems like it just didn't. Yeah, it was just something they couldn't really easily do for a zillion reasons, and it's a shame. And what else is there to say about XNA?
Too much, I think. That's the
Well,
problem.
yeah, there's a lot about XNA. At least I'm not the guy who got the tattoo. That's a friend of mine got an XNA tattoo, and pretty sure that's still on his body. Although for the amount
That's
I
pretty
talk
funny.
about XNA, for the amount I talk about XNA, maybe I should get a tattoo. Evidently, it's a significant part of my life. So hey, why not, right?
All right, so yeah, there was a like I knew that was going to be a bit of a robust topic. I mean, we could go on that forever because there's just so much to go into how XNA linked to Greenlight on Steam and things like that. Because I saw so many things transfer over to Greenlight on Steam.
Yeah, yeah, and the peer review system. I ran a few things through, through peer review. Like you were talking earlier about ZP2KX. I really liked XNA for making not just XNA, but the Xbox Indie Games platform. I really liked that for ZP2KX, because networking, and maybe networking is easier than I imagine it is on PC. But on Xbox 360 through XNA, it was really seamless. It was really nice. It was like a couple lines of code to like look up a friends list. It was super simple to just to process. Like I could, if I looked up a friend, hit join game, for your game to process that event was just super simple. And network traffic was as it's as simple as network traffic is, which is still a pain in the ass to do, but you know um you can make a multiplayer game and just push it live on a console that's just in uh, millions, tens of millions, I don't know, hundreds of millions. I don't know what the install base was, but all these like so many homes, and anyone could just buy your game. You could put your game even just the storefront aspect of it was something special. Because you could tell your friend, hey, I just published a game on Xbox. It's $1, and they'll be like, oh, okay, I'll buy it, and then you can play it together just like that. I mean, it was something really special to be able to do that, and that was in an era where Steam was still um, it was pre-Steam Greenlight, so you couldn't do that on Steam. On Steam or on PC, you'd have to make a game, email it to your friend, and then I'm sure there'd be all sorts of weird problems. Xbox 360, you could publish that in like a week and just be playing a game online together just like that. And I think it deserved more credit for being able to do that than it received. Pretty much people would look at it and just be like, "Oh, look at these hobbyist games. Pass, done." But the opportunity it provided was just something that the world had never seen before, and I think the world is not seeing it again because I mean the bar to get on a console is much higher now. That's the lowest it's ever been, and the most robust of opportunity that has existed for anyone, was just Xbox 360 and XNA.
Yeah, it was a crazy time. I loved it because it was like a revitalization of the shareware scene that had died out on the
Yeah,
PC.
it did feel like that. Yeah, I maybe the problem was that games are just so good now. Like when shareware was big, games were pretty cruddy. I'll just say it, right? You could take just 10 random games off of a BBS back then, and 9 of them are just going to be just ugly as sin, because it was some dude just drawing the art, just writing all the code, drawing all the art by himself. He thought it looked okay. It probably did look decent, to him, but that was the bar. Games just looked like crap back then, and that's okay. It was a young industry. Now, I mean, you like in the era of Xbox 360, you buy an Xbox 360, you can play Halo 3, Gears of War 1, 2, and 3. I guess, yeah, Halo Reach, even. I mean, games looked really good. And then also, like, what the hell is this? You bring up Xbox indie games, and you're just like, really? This is state of the art? you know? But in a different era, I mean, those Xbox indie games would have been just like mind blowing. But that era has passed, and not many people remember that era that are just casually playing 360. And when I say people playing 360, I'm referring to people 10 years ago, because it's like if you have a 360 now and you turn it on, God bless you.
As soon as I get my capture card, I'm gonna fire up my 360 again.
Hell yeah!
That's my
I
goal. I
actually
need a
I actually
capture
use.
card to even stream the goddamn thing because they cut off the Twitch access to be able to stream through your Xbox One seamlessly. You didn't used to have to put games in or titles in or anything. You could just
Uh,
stream through your Xbox One anything. Well, they stopped that. I don't know how many updates back on Twitch when they switched over to Mixer. So now
yeah,
you
yeah.
need a capture card to stream the 360. It sucks. It's
Huh.
not the best time for streamers that are still sticking with Twitch on the
Okay.
Xbox.
Right. I have a 360 that I use just to watch Netflix because I have a TV that uses the input type that was right before HDMI, and it allows HDMI, but it has this weird thing where the audio screws up after like a half hour of HDMI. So it can use the old input, like the old HD input that comes out of an Xbox 360, and that's the only way I can really feasibly use this TV for anything other than. I mean, it's a first world problem for sure, but it does keep me like using an Xbox 360 still in the year 2019, and boy, does it chug! It really chugs. You turn it on and you wait and you wait and you go over to Netflix, you press the button and you wait, and sometimes, oh yeah, it's incredible. I'm just so surprised it still runs. You know, hey,
Yeah, I think I kept mine running a little bit because I had the Gears of War one, and it was bought for me as a gift, so I could never get rid of it. And
cool.
my cats figured out how to operate the power button and the disc tray,
Huh,
and so they
huh.
loved the sound and popping out the disc tray. And to this day, if they see it, they'll still put their paw right where the little disc tray launch thing is because it's just a little like touch thing. They don't
Mm.
have to actually push it in, and they loved it. And they get really annoyed that like nothing happens because I unplugged it because I got tired of them doing the the weird Gears of War
Hmm.
noise that it did and popping out the tray. But they were obsessed with it. Like they would both do it, and of course, cats love touch screens or anything they can put their paws on. Really, they're very inventive about how they can use their non-dexterous paws because they're not
Mm.
raccoons, so they got to work with what they
Yes.
got.
Yes. That's impressive. Impressive cats.
So I guess this would be a good time to ask you about your cats, your lovely cats, your Gato and your Nico. Was it Nico?
Nico, yeah. So yeah, Nico is it's funny. Both cats are kind of improperly named. Nico should be Neko. It's Japanese for cat. So sometimes I call her Neko-chan. But when explaining her name, I describe her as Nico. And Gato should be Gata because it's Spanish for cat. Gato is masculine. Gata is feminine. And they're both sisters. They're both ladies. Um, and yeah, I've had them for they are 14 years old now, and they have been with me through all of Ska Studios, every game. They've been around for a while. Usually, it's funny. Right now, neither cat is nearby, and actually, no, that's not true. Gato is up on there's this room, my office room here. It's kind of got like a vaulted ceiling situation where there's like a ledge over that's basically like the roof of the hallway outside, like a ledge over the hallway outside of this office, and Gato is sitting on that ledge, and I like to call it
He's just waiting
Gato's
to.
world.
She's just waiting to pounce.
Yeah, she likes to monitor the world from up there. Um, it's a good situation. And then Nico, she usually sits on my lap. Lately, she's taken to sitting on my office chair when I'm not there, and then when I come back to sit on my chair, she tells me exactly how she feels about losing her spot because that's where she likes to sit, and yeah, it's her place, not mine. And I have to. I try to explain to her, this is how we, when I work, that's how we make money. If we don't make money, you don't get fed. Yeah, I mean, the whole process. We lose electricity and we lose water. You have to. But nope, they don't get it. They're just like, I want to sit here and you just leave me alone. And yeah, can't explain basic budgeting economics.
Yeah, I had a
But
really
yeah.
weird time with one of my cats one time. I still don't know what caused this, other than I got lazy and I just decided I wasn't going to do a bunch of stuff for my cats. And so my cat Con, I got two cats as well. They're also they're black cats, and they're also siblings. And I got them at the same time at a pet shop. I'd only planned to get one of them, and I ended up with two of them because
Mm.
apparently the girl Cleo did something to someone's dog, and they gave her right back. That's all I know. That's all I know. And she was a tiny little kitten. She's just like the tiniest little kitten, but she did something to someone's dog. I don't know who it was. I never met them, but they gave her right back. And so I ended up with two cats. I actually talked the pet shop owner into giving me like a 2-for-1 deal, sorta, which they hated me for that. And they're like, "Are you really gonna wheel and deal a pet shop?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am," because your prices are ludicrous.
Mm.
And um, yeah, so he just started like saying all kinds of gibberish at me one day, and I'm just listening to him. I'm like, wow, he's really giving it to me. Like he's saying all kinds of stuff, and I have not a damn clue what he's saying, but he's really hammering it in. And it was the funniest thing ever. And he's never done it since, and I don't know what possessed him to do it, but he actually like gave me this giant lecture about all kinds of things. He said, no, 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 no. I just started going on and on and on, just moving his head and waving his paw and doing all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, wow, like I must have really pissed you off. And he's the sweet one.
Hmm. Hmm. Oh boy, that's funny. How old are they again?
Mine are quite young. They're a few years now. I've yeah, they got to be 3 4 years. I always lose track of it. They're definitely adults. I mean, cats turn
Mm.
into adults really quick. It's like 2 years and they're fully grown as adults, or they're
Yeah.
considered full grown adults. So they're definitely adults, but they're still quite young. And the girl Cleo she's she's devilish. She throat punched me when I got her. I thought she was.
Ooh.
I learned real fast why they probably gave her back, because I was laying down one day, and so she's this teeny little kitten, this little ball of fury. By the way, I thought she was a male at that time, and she flies from my legs. I'm laying down. She flies from my legs all the way to my head and punches me as hard as she can. Like actually curls her little paw into a fist and just punches me
Oh,
right in the throat.
never.
And
I've never heard of a cat punching someone. That's
she's
incredible.
vicious. She's a Spartan or something. But she ended up being the climber. I actually bought into this whole thing about cats that climb have more confidence. So I threw a mattress against the wall, an old mattress, and I let him climb off that. And she went right up that thing, no problem. Khan struggled
Mm.
with that. He was the more sensitive one. And for the longest time, I thought she was the male and he was a female, because I had it in my head that the male would be more like rough and tumble, and the female would be more passive. That's not how cats work at all, apparently. I don't know why I even forgot this. The female cats are always kind of aggressive.
Mm.
We just don't think about that because we think in human terms and how we think about, you know, what we perceive females to be, which is not even true, anyways. But it was such a huge mistake. So all the way up until they were all about a year old, I had their genders mixed up and their names too. I was calling them the
Mm.
opposite names, so I had to like stop confusing them. So for a
Mm.
while, Con was Cleo and Cleo was Con, and then everything just sort of sorted itself out. Once I could finally visually distinguish them, because these cats were so similar that like side by side, no one could tell them apart. They were almost identical twins. And then as they
Huh.
started to get older, and the males do look different than females when they start to become adults. Their builds are just so different, and to this day
Mm.
people still can't tell. And but they would like walk side by side and do crazy little miniature panther things, and it was cool. I don't regret picking them up. I do regret that there's not two of me, because
Yeah.
originally I had someone living with me that was going to help me raise these cats, and when I ended up having to raise them all by myself, I'm like, oh shit, I'm outnumbered. Like this is like accidentally having too many kids, but you chose to do this, and so now you're stuck with it, and you just got to raise them. And I did the best I can, but they picked up way too many of my bad habits, as is usually the case.
And I think the older they get, the more chill they get too. They'll become more content with just sitting and watching you.
Yeah, Cleo still punches me in the butt every once in a while. She's just as feisty as she was the day I got her. She'll just she waits even if I'm streaming. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. She waits till I'm distracted, and I lean over just a little bit, and I have the back of my chair open. So she just runs up. She bam. She smacks me in the back with her claws and makes sure I know that she was there. Or she
Huh.
throws things at me. She likes doing that.
Ugh.
She is she's the one that my chat actually or my stream knows her too much, because I'm almost constantly yelling at her. She bounces things off my head. She'll do all kinds of devious things to make sure that I know that I could see her doing it, but there's no way I could stop her, and she knows that, and so she'll just do it anyways.
Mm.
And she's an evil genius, because I have this weird belief that we actually retard cats. Like we overly domesticate them. We try to make them too much into us, and we actually like make them simple minded, and they're just like kids. Like the more you teach them, the more you allow them to learn. They're like cats can be like insanely brilliant, but we
Mm.
don't ever allow it. So we just stuff them full of food, and we just want them to sit there and purr. Is my belief. So I tried to raise them like a little bit more athletically, actively, and
Mm.
it bit me in the ass really hard.
uh, it's like the Wally spaceship, right? Not don't get that. Is it in the movie Wally? You know where there's a colony ship where everyone becomes just incredibly complacent because life is automated.
I still have to see that movie, so
Oh, you haven't seen. Okay, okay,
I
okay.
get the reference, because they sort of kind of did the same thing in there's a really obscure game that I got into. That it ironically is the same creator of the game I play these days, Space Lords, which I didn't know until way later when someone was just blurting out all the games they play. Like even to this day, I'm sure um, people might mention that you did Salt and Sanctuary, but there might be other games that you did that they might not know that you even you made, because it just they don't make the connection, and they might have played these games back in the day, but they for some reason they don't make the connection, which is kind of crazy, because your visual style and your especially your gameplay style is very distinct. I always thought you had a really good grasp on keeping your games very action oriented, but at the same time fun, and also balanced. I didn't see you make a lot of the really weird mistakes that I saw a lot of other independent developers make, where they either tried to get too technical, or they tried to go too off the rails. You did maintain a really good balance. It felt like you had a pretty good idea of what made like an action game, and not just like random shit just happening.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it's practice. A lot of it might just be kind of having like an intuition for it, or an eye for it. Um, there's there's this neat Ira Glass talk about taste, where I don't know if you know Ira Glass. He's a NPR This American Life radio host, but he gives this talk about taste that's. Um, I hope it's true of me, but maybe I'm being over optimistic. But to talk about taste is when you're trying to be creative or artistic. I mean, I guess creative is the catch-all term. Um, initially your arts, your creations, they might be bad, and you can work on them and make them better and make them better. But what you have that's kind of the sort of like the overarching um, maybe like compass for how you create art is your taste, and your taste is just it's with you, and it doesn't change. I guess you could maybe improve it, but your taste can be a lot better than your creative skill, and having that taste, you're able to make a creation and allow your taste to say, this creation sucks, make it better. And you know, eventually you'll figure out why it doesn't work, because you have this taste that tells you this doesn't work. I don't know why, but it doesn't work. And you can tweak it and you can work on it, and eventually your taste will say, yep, there it is. And you know, I like to think that maybe I have good taste in developing action systems. um, I really enjoy playing action games, and I've played games for so much of my life. It's been good practice, maybe. So yeah, I mean, with you know, Dishwasher, Charlie Murder, Salt and Sanctuary, um, you know, it has been a lot of, you know, play it, does it feel right, do things. There's a really common pitfall I see with games where developers will have clumsy controls because it's it's way easier to implement the clumsy controls than to go the extra mile and implement controls that are intuitive but just hard to implement. And so you know,
You mean
as
like
a
keyboard and
developer,
mouse?
um well, no, I mean, like say if there's like a different button to climb a ladder, whereas intuitively you would just want to press up on the ladder, you know, or like stuff like that, where it's like a different button or a weird combination of buttons to do one thing or another, where you just intuitively want to um, use a certain button combination because it just makes sense. So yeah, I mean, stuff like that, like you when you play it as a creator with taste as to how it should play, you should be able to catch these pitfalls and be like, well, you know, I want to do this, but you know, like my muscle memory tells me that when I do this, this should happen, and it's not happening, and I can go down two roads. I can either pretend that it's fine, or I can just do the work and make it happen the way it's supposed to happen. You know, like stuff with I mean, the one thing I always like is like air combos. Air combos are, you know, you want them to feel so that, you know, you punch in the buttons and they work perfectly. And and then there's an amount of leeway for how you punch in the buttons. There's an amount of leeway for like where you're standing and what where the enemy's standing. And with that sort of window of leeway, it still feels good when you punch in the buttons in the right order. And you know, you don't have to get the timing perfect. You don't have to, you know, like it's not like the timing for this part to this part to this part is different from between part A and part B. You just want to punch in the buttons and have it feel good. And so, you know, like part of my job as the developer is to do all the ugly work to just make it so that when you play it, it plays like it's supposed to play. And that's that's a that's a very very long-winded, somewhat rambly answer to how to what's the deal
Yeah, I'm trying not to
with the
interrupt
action.
you because it's I could add so many extra threads to this. Now, if Space Lords, God forbid, ever does a demake, which some people aren't familiar with, that's when you take a like a modern 3D game and make it into a 2D game. I really hope they go with you, and I really hope they help you have you build it for them, because you have
Oh.
such a good sense of how these things could work. And if you ever fire up Space Lords, you can see how when I tell people sometimes it does harken back to kind of the Genesis era and that sort of roughness, but they just
Mm,
sort of make it work. And they're crazy Spanish people, so um, that's you don't see
okay.
too many Spanish developers. I say it because there just aren't that many Spanish developers. It's really got its own style, but it also makes some really crazy bad mistakes that I'm always questioning. Like, why did you do this? Like, if you just like had someone to like what is that where someone gives their advice to be there and say
Like a
no, like
consultant or a yeah.
you could tweak this and this could be more fun, this could be more interesting, and this could be more fluid. I think the game could have been a lot more ace than it is, and it's still a very good game. But you could see when you play the game that you, as a player, make it work. And I didn't feel that way when I played your games. Obviously, I felt more like I was just playing the game like I would play an instrument, and it just worked. And like you said, you
Cool.
focused more on the intuitive side of things. You went the extra mile to do the controls. Controls are huge. People pass on that so much, and they think having a control scheme, which is a part of the design, is not a big deal, and they just start throwing in well, they'll use common control schemes, which
Mm.
is okay, but that may not work for your particular style of game or how your game flows, and they don't think about these things because they just want they want that sort of default status where people can go in and start knowing what buttons to press, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't feel good. Played so many games that just try to shoehorn in, like I said, even a mouse and keyboard scheme. Play a game in it and they want you to use a mouse and keyboard. I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't really make sense in this game. I saw that happen with Ragdoll Kung Fu way back in the day. It was a mouse
Mm.
control game, and it finally got onto console, and it did what I wanted them to do all along, was to use a dual analog controller. And of course, it was a lot easier to play and more
Mm.
intuitive that way. But it took them years to get to that point to finally admit, yeah, maybe a controller was maybe a better way to go than to like force it onto a mouse.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I when I play, I guess like hasn't haven't played Battlefield in a while. What's a good like any? Oh, I know GTA. Yeah, GTA is a good example. I will play using mouse and keyboard if I am on foot and aiming, and if I am driving a vehicle, I'll switch to a gamepad, which will just kind of sit on my lap. And I've always wondered why there isn't. There must be a good peripheral, right? Like some kind of peripheral where you can basically it's like the left side of a gamepad that
Yeah,
would take the place.
there's gaming mice, and I've looked into them, but they're like ludicrously expensive. We're talking like hundreds of dollars to replace a controller that costs a fraction of that.
Yeah. So yeah, I might just keep that. And I used an Xbox 360 controller. I mean, in my mind, that is the apex of controllers is Xbox 360. It's only been downhill from there. So yeah, I'll have that sitting on my lap, and I'll use WASD and a mouse to shoot if my guy is on foot, and then as soon as I get in car, I just pick up that gamepad, and it works. I cannot complain. So there's a thing about controls that I don't know if anyone's listening. So someone out there can make that happen. Give me a keyboard that's gamepad esque. Yeah, I don't, I don't know how that would work, and it doesn't seem like there's a significant demand for such a thing.
Yeah, that weird chat pad thing peripheral for the Xbox 360 controller that used to like snap in between
Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
and
that was.
that actually kind of was that, but it was super silly to use that as like I'm sure you could, but you were just as likely probably to get good controls out of like a dance pad or a out of a guitar, because people did that too. People would do those really every once in a while. I'd see really weird challenges where people would use a bizarre controller that you wouldn't normally use, but it could still work, and they would
Oh,
play a
I
game
know.
that
Yeah,
way, and it was
like
just fun to watch.
it was some like was it Donkey Kong drums or something to beat Dark Souls? Didn't that happen? Didn't it? Something like that happened.
It's definitely possible. So we want to look ahead, preferably a little bit ahead, but not so much ahead. The Great Sugar Wars have already happened, and there's screaming children everywhere taking all our sugar.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a nut. The Great Sugar Wars of 2025. They're so close. Just 5 more years.
Okay. Okay.
The children are just frothing at the mouth for the sugar. It's gonna happen. I can't see how these kids are gonna get themselves unaddicted from sugar. I just see them like drug addicts. Like they're just gonna want it so much, and they're just gonna start breaking into people's homes for fucking sugar or just wherever they can get their hands on, because they're just
It's
gonna
on the
become
way.
massively addicted.
Yeah.
So,
I
where do you
yeah, go
see
for it.
yourself? Not maybe not in that future because that's a crazy future. That's
Sure,
maybe
sure. Yeah,
part two.
yeah.
But where do you see yourself moving forward? And what do you maybe want to if you can reveal anything about any future plans you have for your studio yourself? Because yes, people will listen to this. I am gonna hopefully record this properly and get this out there for people to watch and. Everybody must be curious. Anybody that's a remote fan of yours, or maybe is a fan of you now, after this.
Sure, sure. Yeah. I can't. I think what'll happen is I'm just going to keep mum until I have something new to show. That's I mean, I like 5 years from now, I'd like to still be making games. I love making games. And Yeah, but I mean, right now I don't have anything new announced, and I don't know how soon it'll be. I mean, if I did, I could announce
It's
that, but I
very
don't.
ominous. That's very ominous.
Yeah.
That's exactly don't look behind the curtains kind of talk right there. This is when I
Yeah.
got O'Jewel in the interview, and I got him into a corner, and I got him to admit that something was going on, but he couldn't talk about it because I
Hmm.
brought up the Switch version of Space Lords. I'm like, well, that's kind of a yes, but I know you can't talk about it, so I just let it go.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I will say that I hope to be making video games for a long, long time, and yeah, I hope people are still out there who like the stuff that I make, because that's the other part of the equation. But yeah, I love making games. It's been a passion of mine since I was like a little kid. And Yeah, I'm gonna keep doing it.
So we'll go off. We'll go off base a little bit here. I could lead right into something else, but that's just not me. Let's talk about role playing. Let's talk about you being a dungeon master in a
Oh
in
yeah,
a
yeah.
in a pirate role play
Yeah, well,
fantasy
yeah, that's
setting.
just it's that is the current well, actually it's not even the newest one, but it's a Wizards of the Coast published adventure called Ghosts of Saltmarsh that I'm running with some very dear friends. And yeah, yeah, I've and actually I'm gonna have to hop off. I mean, soonish, because I just kind of have to get ready for that. So appreciate appreciate you um, letting us kind of delay this interview a little bit, because I said I was stuck in traffic. That part happened off interview. But yeah, so yeah, I've been DMing for a while. I only started playing D&D like um, but God, I don't even know if it was like 3 years or 4 years ago. That kind of timeline. At first, I just had no idea what it was. And then I was like, oh, okay, it's like a classic PC RPG. All right, now I know the language. And there's a lot of there was a lot of like freedom to it that I just at first I was kind of uncomfortable with, because I need to think in terms of games. It's like, well, how much health do I like what if I can I like knock over a chair? Now what happens? Just stupid things like that. Can I like break a window? What happens if I just pour this beer out on the floor? And like because it's just kind of weird playing in a game where uh you can just say I'd like to do something, and then that happens. Um
Yeah, I guess
although
if you go like way, not way ahead, but ahead enough, the text adventure games that parsed text and had all these different weird outcomes were kind of like the next logical step out of like the tabletop RPG, and then they quickly became buried and disappeared into the more standard adventure games, and then the action adventure games took over, and it just sort of buried the whole tabletop RPG until, of course, like strategy games, like turn-based strategy games, became a really big deal. And then the
mm,
whole board game revitalization I noticed was huge, especially in Germany. They're obsessed. They're absolutely
mm.
obsessed in maybe not just Germany, Europe in general, with board games. Like they're just mad obsessed with them.
Ugh, yeah, I know Shadowrun's big in Germany. That's the one thing I know about German TTRPGs. Um, but yeah, I really got smitten by D&D. The I think just hands down favorite thing about it is just the amount of improv and acting, which is it's something weird that I just kind of discovered about myself, that I love doing different voices, and I love just setting up weird scenes and just having them play out. And yeah, I had no idea that D&D would be so much fun. And I've been there have been times when I've been like DMing three different groups simultaneously, well, not but in like the same, like group one will be on Wednesday, group two will be on Saturday, group three will be on Tuesday, that kind of thing. Um, and I've cooled it a bit since then. I'm only DMing one active group, but then I'm like playing in one, and I'm playing in one Pathfinder group now, so it is still maybe out of hand. But I'm spending less time on it, outside of when I'm just actively playing it. Because that's the other thing, is it becomes a time sink even when you're not playing it. Like, I got into painting miniatures, and I've just got, I don't know if it's like over 100 miniatures, or if it just seems like 100, or if it's more than 100. I mean, who knows? But I can spend like 4 8 hours on a single miniature. Like, that's serious time that's been adding up now. That's not, I don't think that's okay. I don't know, but I guess then you've got people who've put 2,000 hours into Destiny. So if I've put 800 hours into miniatures, who knows?
Yeah, I
But
think
yeah,
that's
that's
okay. So of course I got to drag it back to one of my all-time favorite games that you created. That is it is a lot lesser known, even though ironically it goes way far back. The ZP2K series goes way back, doesn't it? Even when you were experimenting with River City Ransom and all that, there was all these crazy iterations, and it eventually became a 2D Soldat PvP game with outfits and all kinds of crazy shit going on. It was super slick, and I always randomly nag you about it because I had so much fun with that game, and I would love to see it even in an evolved form, even with the tiniest changes, even no changes, because it like Soldat died away. Obviously, like Soldat's gone. People don't probably even know what Soldat is. But once upon a time, Soldat was huge, and the formula was so well evolved from what what you had seen, I guess, come out with the perk systems and like Call of Duty and whatnot, and it all just worked. You ended up with all these builds, and they were on the
mm,
fly, which was great. It's adverse to what we see now, where you have to pre-build your characters. You were actually building these characters as you were playing the match, and it was so spontaneous and poppy. And I even went back with a friend, and I got him to play it with me, and we ended up having like a random person, uh, you know, or two fighting against us, and we were
mm.
destroying them because we were crazy with the sword and all that stuff, and it still felt good. Like even after all this time, it still felt good, and I always felt it was a really good formula. So I'm just gonna say, because I don't wanna plug you too hard on this, but I really hope you go back and revisit that in whatever form possible, because it was such a beautiful thing. It was such a great
Oh,
combination of different gameplay styles as well as really old ones. Like I said, because Soldat was just a 2D version of what the hell is that game with the terrorists and
oh, CS:GO. I
yeah,
mean, I guess it
well,
was Counter Strike back then.
Counter Strike.
Yeah,
It was just Counter Strike
yeah,
at that time. There was no CS:GO, but yeah, it was just a
yeah.
2D version of Counter Strike. That's all Soldat was ever meant to be, and it became this huge thing on the internet. Uh,
Mm,
I almost worked on a game myself that was going to be a Soldat clone, but with like fantasy stuff in it instead,
mm,
and it ended up
mm,
turning into a single player game, and then it ended up getting dropped. So like it
mm.
had that kind of influence. Like it had massive influence. But again, it got forgotten. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And you could say whatever you want, but I had to throw that in there because I do
Yeah.
have a huge fondness for that game and also the older series. Because like I said, I remember that there was an iteration. So if you want to talk about like how that series came to be, why you kept sticking with ZP2K and just kept iterating with it because I know another gentleman, Walter Mercado, he's been doing the same thing. He's been just
Mm.
iterating with a design and just keep changing it and creating all these sequels that are different, but they're also similar.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that was kind of a that was a phase. I guess it was maybe a little bit more experimental. It was the Z always stood for zombies because I used to think zombies were the best. Uh, I mean, yeah, there was everyone was really into zombies in the early 2000s. Um, and yeah, I mean, like I said before, with ZB2KX, the just the ease at which I was able to create a bunch of multiplayer, just like a whole multiplayer framework for the game. Well, essentially using the XNA framework for multiplayer. Um, it really made it just fun and exciting to build build like a multiplayer platform. Um, and when I was like a teenager, I guess I was really into I guess Quake. It was mostly just Quake 2, and then like a little. I guess Half-Life with mostly with Team Fortress Classic because I really liked Team Fortress on Quake 1. Um, and yeah, like I've always loved those types of games, and I've always wanted to make my own. So ZB2KX, I mean, like I've said with a lot of I mean Charlie Murder, Salt and Sanctuary, a lot of it just came from like I like this game. I want to try to make a game using these mechanics in this vein. I want to experiment with these things. I want to just see what the challenge is in implementing these things. And then so yeah, for me, ZB2KX was about experiencing the challenge of multiplayer, about I mean playing Quake, and you're like, wouldn't it be cool if there was this, so like how about a gun that shoots bees, like let's put a rail gun in there, some rocket launchers. There's a rainbow gun that just kind of makes your enemy just sort of float upwards, and it's kind of like a stun. Oh yeah, there's a shrink ray. I forgot about the shrink ray. There's like a zillion grenades. And like I loved the time grenade. That was so good. Where it would make like a bubble of time that bullets would get slowed down in. But yeah, I mean there were so many things where it was like I want to try this out. I want to try that out, and ZB2KX became kind of like just a sandbox for me to play around with all that. All that said, I'm gonna make a note. I should, yeah, like I want to. I'm not gonna, um, I'm not gonna like work on these games more, um, but um, I could see open sourcing them just to see if anyone else wants to work on them. Um, because yeah, I mean, I I kind of have to go forward. That's just how I do. I have to go forward. I have to move forward. But yeah, I should open source my old stuff, and maybe someone will pick it up and just see what they can do with it.
Yeah, if you could, because I know this happened with Beats of Rage was an independent game that did just that. They ended up going over to Open Beats of Rage, and they just open sourced it and just let people go wild with it, and it ended up being a huge movement with people using OpenBR to make all kinds of beat 'em ups. If you used it as a sort of just like XNA was kind of a platform for you, a platform for people to make a game of that type, that could be huge for them to maybe even get into game design because modding or working on a lower level with easier to use scripts is a real good entry level into design. It teaches you a lot of principles. Um,
Mm,
the, the floor for entry is low enough that anybody can get in it, and you avoid a lot of those frustrations of all the math and the figuring things out like 10 steps ahead and then going back and tweaking everything if things just
sure.
kind of work already and you're
Yep.
working on a more simplistic manner. But yeah, I mean, hell, if you went back and I don't know, I guess it would be something of an editor that you probably, I imagine, had built into it already, anyways. Uh, yeah, it could be huge. I mean, it could be. You never know what people will do that things. I'm always hoping that with Mercury Steam's little pet project, Space Lords, that they'll do that as well one day, and they'll open it up to the creative market, so to speak, and they'll let. We have tons of artists in the Space Lords community, but they can't do anything except for draw fan art, and it kills me. Like, it's just like you have all these creative individuals. They love the game, they love the lore, they love everything, but they can't do anything with it. And it just feels like a missed opportunity. But that kind of weird modder era or level editor era of games has kind of almost came and gone too fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I miss boy, yeah, Quake mods used to be really exciting just to see what would be coming down the pipeline. Quake 2 mods. Um yeah, that used to be cool. And also there used to be just far fewer games back then. Now you can just never finish your library, you know? And back then it was like, I mean there's a new if there was like a new Quake mod out, or like I remember the Half-Life, what was it called? They Hunger packs for Half-Life were just, it was like a new They Hunger episode is out, and that's what I would do for that weekend, just play this new Half-Life map. It's just a interesting time. And I think it's more just that games now are just so much more compelling that the spending your effort on on playing, I mean, at least for me, like for me to like seek out mods, I don't have that, I don't feel compelled to at all, just because I have such a backlog. I mean, if I were to play anything right now, it would probably be Destiny 2, but I'm so far behind on that, and it's um yeah. But yeah, I definitely I miss the excitement of a modding community.
All
Oh.
right, so I'm going to ask you a small favor, just
Mm.
so my community can get a link into your community. You said you're going to start a stream for the role playing. Your
Oh, yep.
crew. So if you
Yeah,
don't
that,
mind, do you still have access to the personal Discord, the one that I gave you the link to originally?
yeah. Well, where is it? I'll figure this out. Let's see. Yeah, it's like I had it open.
I could also re-give it to you. It's not a big deal. But if you could be so kind as to, oh, good, you took the whole mattress out. All right.
Oh, there it is.
There's my cats just knocking the whole damn mattress down. As I get excited, they too get excited, and
Yeah.
they became destructive.
Okay. Yeah,
If
I
you
linked
could
it in
post that
your.
link in the Discord, I think it would be a really cool portal for people to get into your stuff. Not everybody, obviously. I don't think I think only one, two people pop in and out. We're able to see this, but they can at least get access to your channel, because you do the role playing on a sort of frequentish basis, and it's a good way for them to know you, in my opinion, outside of just this is developer, because developers have, I'm trying to kill some of that mystique that developers have. They're either like superheroes or they're supervillains, is the way I see it. Like, if you're giving people what they want, you're a superhero, and you can't you're invincible, and people think you have magical powers and can do all kinds of crazy things. They don't see you as a human being at all. And if you're pissing them off for whatever reason, you're a supervillain, and you're just ruining their lives, and everything you've done from here to the end of time is just to make them miserable. And it's such a bizarre perspective. The developers have become these sort of weird, eclectic, not really so willing rock stars. Because like if you look at someone like Cliffy B, he kind of canned that thing for himself, but most don't. Most just want to work on a game and get it out, and hopefully not get too much hate mail. But so
Yeah.
I very much thank you for this time, and hopefully people do check out your role play and see that you're a guy making games,
Sure.
and you've been
Yeah,
making
yeah.
them for years, and you've got other interests and stuff going on too.
Sure. Here's hoping. Yeah, that's a good for. Thanks for looking out.
I mean, I was there. I just never got anywhere with it. It was one of my biggest disappointments, was that I'd always say I'm gonna go back, but it's kind of almost what you said about the whole backlog thing. Like I almost don't know where to start, because they have so many dropped projects that
Yeah.
I wouldn't know where to begin, and I start them and then I get frustrated and then I stop, and then I got to go wake up and go to work the next day. It's that kind of madness. But thank you super much for doing this. This has actually been a big thing of mine. Always wanted to talk to you and interview on this stuff. It's a little bit late. Kind of wanted to do this like maybe almost 10 years ago when all that whole scene was just exploding. But I still think you're relevant. I think that people shouldn't forget that you've done things, and you're probably still going to continue to do things. I would hope. I'm holding out hope, even if you won't reveal anything. That things will happen. Wink, wink. And yeah, so anybody that I don't think there's actually anybody in here. I got another wonderfully dead chat. But they will listen to this later on. My VODs are strangely popular sometimes.
Okay.
Go ahead, drop that link, like I said, and I'm gonna hang out over there for a while because I need a breather, and I'll just watch you guys do crazy, weird fantasy piratey stuff, I guess.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, it was good talking.
All right, so that's gonna do it. Hope anybody that ends up listening to this catches it later on, or maybe you might even caught it live. I think Takato popped in here at one point. Thank you very much, Soma, for dropping by. Sorry you're muted at the second. This is so I can end things because I'll endlessly have a conversation with you. And that's it. Wonderful.
Okay.
And later.